So what I'm trying to address in the book, The Illusion of Free Markets, is this central paradox in public imagination today. Conflict, or this tension between, on the one hand, the idea of, well, the free market, the idea that the government, in some sense, is inefficient or ineffective or incompetent at addressing issues of economic exchange. And on the other hand, the fact that we live in a country that has the largest prison population by number and by rate in the world. And so how is it exactly that you can, on the one hand, have a majority of the citizens feeling that government is not very good at what it does, and yet allow the government to incarcerate a full 1% of the population? So one of the things that triggered this whole enterprise was a book that I found that was published in 1758 called the Dictionnaire de la Police. And it's a beautiful folio volume from the 18th century. And I was leafing through it, and it's a thick book that covers all of the policing that was done in Paris in the 18th century. And there was a lot of it. And when I got to the entry for markets, marché, it simply said, see police. And so the idea was that in the 18th century, at least the idea of the author of the dictionary and the prevailing notion was that these markets were extremely policed. So policed, in fact, that you wouldn't even define what a market is. You would simply refer to the entry for policing. So something else that really contributed to this book was some research I was doing at the Chicago Board of Trade. And of course, the Chicago Board of Trade is this swarming, colorful place where that we go to look at, and we look at it and we think this is the free market. From its inception in the 19th century, at the beginning of the 19th century, the Chicago Board of Trade has been regulated through and through. The birth of the penitentiary in the beginning of the 19th century, and then the growth since 1970, have all been associated with periods when, in some sense, the logic of the market has been at its peak. So the penitentiary was actually born at the beginning of the 19th century during a period that we refer to as the market revolution. Historians refer to it as the market revolution. And then we see, after stability for 50 years, 60 years, we see the prison populations beginning to start exploding with what we tend to call neoliberalism, or the post-1970s period. So what I did in the book was to try to trace this idea of an efficient market, our contemporary idea of an efficient market, and to see where it was born. And so that took me to the 18th century physiocrats, who were one of the first economists, a set of economists in France, particularly François Quesnay, and to this idea they had of natural orderliness in the economic domain. For them, it was predominantly in the agricultural domain, but they thought that this space was entirely governed by a natural form of orderliness that required absolutely no intervention. And they came up, actually, Quesnay himself came up with this famous tableau économique, which is this zigzag picture. But what it shows is that the economic exchange is entirely self-contained, that the three columns, that the producers and buyers, etc., are entirely contained, and the only way to produce net product is to have no external interference. So one can trace not only the efficient market back to these notions of natural orderliness, but one can also trace the juxtaposition or the paradox of natural orderliness in economics and a strict policing all the way back to the 18th century. At all of the junctures, they were born together, and throughout the 19th century and into the 20th century, and still today, they in some sense are bound together in this practically subconscious way.